A momentous breakthrough has cast Gaza into a fragile new chapter. A ceasefire agreement brokered by the United States and supported by regional actors resulted in the landmark exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners. But as the guns quiet and the air grows still, an urgent question hangs over the territory. What comes next? The day after the deal, reports filter out of Gaza of unrest, bloodshed, and a landscape more broken than ever. Hamas gunmen are alleged to have carried out executions. The Palestinian Civil Defense has reported that 7 people were killed by Israeli forces in 2 separate incidents in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Israel has said that the identities of 4 bodies of hostages handed over yesterday have been confirmed. These grim developments unfold amid sweeping evidence of devastation. The United Nations Development Team estimates that more than 80% of all buildings in the Strip have been destroyed or damaged, with the toll even higher in Gaza City. Drone imagery underscores the scale. Entire neighborhoods flattened, infrastructure erased. The humanitarian dimension is stark. No water, shattered homes, millions clinging to survival. In Washington and Jerusalem, the political celebration has begun. President Trump, on a whirlwind trip to the region, hailed the accord as the dawn of a golden age. But critics argue that his peace plan is short on the mechanics of real governance and that the deal might unravel before the ink dries. In theory, the peace agreement envisioned a scenario in which Hamas would disarm, cede the levers of authority, and allow a new governance structure to take shape in Gaza. But the reality on the ground is defiant. Far from disarming and giving up power as the plan demands, Hamas is asserting its authority over Gaza's ruins. Within hours, violence flared. Gun battles between Hamas and rival armed gangs, and verified video showing extrajudicial executions of opponents. The control vacuum left by Israel's withdrawal is being filled and contested rapidly. One resident, speaking in anguish at the emotional weight of loss, said, "It's like the soul been taken as well from us as families. We've been kidnapped as families." And another, invoking the essential dignity of closure, insisted, "We cannot pass into the path of rebuilding Gaza, going to phase 2, phase 3 in the framework, until we have all our beloved ones back. The priority is clear: full return of the dead, accountability for violations, and a guarantee that no faction will spill more blood. Ceasefire or not, human life in Gaza is teetering on a razor's edge. With supply lines opening tentatively, trucks carrying food, medicine, tents, and fuel began entering the Strip. UN teams moved swiftly to restore water systems, anticipating that displaced families would soon begin to return to Gaza City and surrounding areas. "We need water," said one aid official, describing how everywhere they went during assessments, people were making that universal sign for "please give me a drink." Still, the damage is staggering. Over 90% of buildings in Gaza City are considered destroyed or uninhabitable. For more than 2 million Palestinians, what was once a home is now a rubble field, and the hope for rebuilding must contend with debris, contamination, mines, and fractured infrastructure. Efforts are underway. Hospitals, utilities, and shelter projects are being assessed. Organizations are bringing in emergency kits and winter preparations. But access remains contested by security concerns, logistical barriers, and political wrangling. The next few days will be critical in determining whether the promise of relief turns into a lifeline or stalls in bureaucracy and violence. Embedded in the ceasefire's success is the diplomatic choreography behind it. President Trump was a visible force in the region, arriving in Israel and Egypt, speaking before the Knesset and pushing a 20-point framework for Gaza. Rockets of rhetoric accompanied the handshakes, and in Jerusalem he called for a radical shift from war to reconstruction. As one observer put it, the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh was a moment of celebration. But now the full challenge and the complexity of the implementation lies ahead. The rhetoric is behind him. The real work looms. At the core of the debate are 2 intersecting questions. How fast must a stabilization force be deployed to maintain order in Gaza? What kind of transitional governance will succeed Hamas without collapsing into chaos? Some proposals put forward high-profile personalities, Tony Blair and other international figures, to anchor the interim administration, but that approach is controversial, especially among local constituencies who might see it as external imposition. As one analyst said, unless humanitarian support is delivered very quickly, and unless the international community step up rapidly to fill the security void, the situation could get worse before it gets better. A 3-day conference is underway in the UK, gathering regional and European nations to flesh out plans for rebuilding Gaza and bolstering the Palestinian Authority. But as the world meets in halls, Gaza's streets are already in flux. The agreement's viability now depends on strict guardrails. There is deep concern that the deal could unravel, whether through delays in returning bodies left unrecovered or through failure to disarm Hamas. As one interlocutor bluntly summarized, continued international engagement is non-negotiable. The United States, regional players, and the United Nations must remain active. Israel faces its own pressure. It must press for the safe return of remaining hostages and provide formal guarantees that the process remains peaceful. Experts also point to demining agencies, NGOs like the Halo Trust, and organizations skilled in reconstruction and stabilization as crucial actors in bridging the security gap. But the symbolism matters: the return, the safety, the visible transformation, if the next phases are to gain legitimacy. Broader tensions lurk in the shadows. Israeli settlers continuing to take Palestinian land, the unresolved question of a Palestinian state, and divergent visions of one-state or two-state solutions. The ceasefire deal skirts these issues, deferring key questions about sovereignty, Palestinian self-rule, and the shape of Gaza's political future. One question is central: when and how will meaningful negotiations begin for a Palestinian state that can live side by side with Israel in stability? That moment has yet to arrive. In Gaza City, families return along dusty roads lined with rubble. Some carry the photos of loved ones, others carry hope. One mother, worn but resolute, told interviewers, "I support any effort that leads to security and stability and revives the economy because we're exhausted and we want to raise our children." The exhaustion is not just physical, but generational. After years of siege, war, and displacement, many await not rhetoric, but action. Yet voices of anger and suspicion linger. In Israel, some accuse Hamas of violating the spirit of the deal by delaying the return of all remains. In some quarters, that is seen as a betrayal, a barrier to passing into reconstruction phases. Within Gaza, the reassertion of Hamas control over armed gates is met with fear and resistance. And in capitals globally, there is real concern. Will the US president, once back at the White House, shift focus away from the Middle East, just as the region demands the most consistent attention? At this junction, the path is delicate. Deploy stabilization forces swiftly. Without a secure environment, aid workers, returning civilians, and reconstruction teams risk falling into disorder. Return all bodies and accelerate accountability. The emotional core of this deal lies in closure for families. Every delay risks unraveling legitimacy, map a clear governance transition. If Hamas cannot remain armed, a credible alternative must be ready. The international community and Palestinian leadership need a joint roadmap. Ensure Israeli withdrawal is meaningful. The lingering presence of military forces or unauthorized incursions may undermine the ceasefire's stability. Begin formal negotiations on the Palestinian state. Gaza can't exist in limbo. The bigger political questions cannot remain deferred forever. Success will require sustained leadership from President Trump and the US, from regional powers like Egypt, Jordan, and the Gulf, and from multilateral institutions like the UN and specialized agencies. The ceasefire was a milestone, but now the leaders must continue their focus, and global engagement must transform into on-the-ground delivery. Unless the world holds its nerve, the worst fears may become reality: the ceasefire collapsing, Gaza descending into chaos, reconstruction stalled, and a new generation trapped between ruins and uncertainty.